Hello everyone, my name is Jack Kostal, and I'm a senior psychology major. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some research I did over the summer on cognitive and motivational predictors of academic performance under stereotype threat, which I will explain all of that as I go through, so don't worry. And so I got interested in this when I was having a class with Dr. Turing. We learned about how intelligence can predict performance in a variety of different domains. So I thought that was pretty cool. This is very applicable to life because if you can predict performance better, you can better choose people for jobs, and when they're in school, you can help them out if they're having trouble. And so, some background. For intelligence, G theory describes how scores on different tests, different domains of tests, tend to correlate. And Charles Spearman in 1904 posited that the general intelligence accounted for the correlation between tests. And subsequent research has largely supported his theory. John Carroll in 1993 made a three-strand theory which investigated about 100 years of studies and found that in general there is a general intelligence that predicts performance in a variety of domains, and that this intelligence correlates highly with subsets of cognitive abilities, which in turn correlate with other subsets. It has very high predictability in both school and work. It accounts for about 25% of variance in both school and work. Regarding motivation, achievement mode describes a general propensity to either work towards achievement or instead to work away from failure. Elliott and Church provides a hierarchical model which in essence said that achievement motive leads to different achievement goals, and that these goals in turn lead to different achievement outcomes. And in general, moving towards success, so a hope for success, or D for achievement in this case, is preferable to a fear of failure, and you have much better performance outcomes. Locus of control, in turn, describes if you feel whether you can influence events with your own mind, or instead it's outside forces controlling how you perform. And Finley and Cooper did a literature review that found that a more internal locus of control, so you feel that you control events in your life, tends to be correlated with better performance. While Anderson was trying to figure out kind of why this happens. And he found that in stress settings, persons with more internalized locus of control tend to focus more on problems and solving problems as opposed to dealing with their emotions. And motivation has unique predictability that is different from G, and so that's just the Spinet, and Plummer study. Stereotype threat occurs when an individual is in a stereotype situation and they know it, and that causes anxiety. They tend to perform worse in that situation for that reason. Aronson et al. Described situations where this occurs, and in general, you will have a situation in which a person, how they identifies with the performance domain, as well as a certain group, and the group is stereotyped within that domain. And so, for instance, if you were to have a girl who was taking a math test, and she's very proud of her femininity and of being a woman, but she's also very interested in math, and she values math highly, and she is aware that women are stereotyped in math as being not so good at it. It would cause some cognitive issues for her because she realizes that's a threat, and that leads to a cascade of anxiety responses, which greatly impacts performance. Schmaler, Johns, and Forbes describe some of the ways in which this happens, and in essence, when in a stereotype threat situation, individuals tend to have a bunch of processes come together which impairs their working memory, or in essence, how well they can process and use information, and that leads to decrements in performance. And so some hypotheses I had for this study were that achievement motive and locus of control would both correlate with measures of academic achievement, that the more internal locus of control would attenuate any stereotype threat effects that we found, that ACT scores and matrices scores, we had a matrices test, which was similar to Raven's progressive matrices, which is a test of G, or general intelligence, will both correlate positively with each other and with measures of academic achievement, and that the predictive power of G will decrease under conditions of stereotype threat. Regarding academic performance measures, high school GPA and college GPA will both moderate the effects of stereotype threat, with higher GPAs being associated with worse performance under threat. And that's because of Aronsen's research, where I was thinking that if you had a higher GPA, you would identify more with academics, and as such, if you're in a stereotype threat situation, it will affect you more. And for stereotype threat, I thought there would be an interaction between stereotype threat and gender performance on the mathematical and verbal portions of the test of academic achievement. In line with what you would expect, where under a stereotype threat, men will perform better on the math test and women better on the verbal test, because the other gender will have their performance impacted by the threat. And then also I thought there'd be an interaction effect, where under stereotype threat, looks and control will interact with G to produce students' performance on the test of academic achievement that we had. For this study, our participants were 101 Creighton undergraduates. We had about a representative proportion of females and males in proportion to how they actually are on campus. And their mean age was about 20 years, 19 and a half. Our materials, where we had a achievement level scale, fear of failure scale, and looks and control scale. And those were all very well validated and reliable from the research literature. And then we had to devise the test of academic achievement and the test of G. For the test of G, we got matrices like problems from in pretty much a test yourself intelligence book that I bought the previous summer. And then for the test of academic achievement, we borrowed some questions from GRE practice books because it's very similar to stuff in the SAT as well as the GRE, which both purport to test academic achievement. And our procedure was actually a two-part thing. First, we gave participants a survey in which they completed the achievement motive, fear of failure, looks and control scale, as well as a time test of G, the matrices. And after that, we presented them with a survey packet to include the test of academic achievement. And from this packet, there's actually a stereotype threat problems, where participants in the no threat condition were told that everyone tends to perform equally on both portions of the test. Whereas in the threat condition, they were told that men tend to perform better on the math test and women on the verbal test. If you could pass those around. There we go. Okay, awesome. Here are our results. If you look to the lower left, it should be in red. Contrary to what I hypothesized, achievement motive did not really predict anything in this sample regarding academic achievement, while looks and control did predict high school, or correlated with, didn't actually predict high school GPA, math test scores, and verbal test scores. Whereas ACT scores and matrices scores correlated with each other, which I'd expected because they're both tests of G, as well as high school GPA, college GPA, math test scores, and verbal test scores. There was a moderate stereotype threat. On the math test, under no threat conditions, men tend to outperform women by a significant margin. Whereas under stereotype threat, both genders perform equally, and that's actually contrary to what was hypothesized. I had expected that females would perform worse under threat than males, and that actually did not happen. The opposite effect was found. Here are some interaction effects. Under no threat and threat conditions, there appeared to be relatively little difference, though for individuals who were high in G in both conditions, who were also had more internalized levels of control, tends to perform better regardless. Some other results were that the predictive power of high school GPA increased under threat conditions, which was actually, once more, I didn't really expect that. I thought that looks and control might have a bit of a bigger role, but it did not. The predictive power of G did not vary between threat and no threat conditions, as the previous slide kind of showed. And looks and control did attenuate stereotype threats. And so if you had more internal looks and control, and you felt that you controlled your own academic destiny, you tended to perform better and feel less stereotype threat. For some discussion, this study that I just ran shows some of the importance of looks of control in terms of having internalized locus of control, and that helping you perform better in school and under threat. And Kirkpatrick, Stamp, Downs, and Gaither actually did a study where they tried to manipulate participants' locus of control. It was an intervention where they focused on telling students, here's what you can do to actually succeed in school, think of these things, and try to win this. And they actually did develop more internal locus of control. They performed about a grade better at the end of the semester than would have been expected otherwise. And some other implications are that it shows how stereotype threat does not always have a very harmful impact, which some literature would suggest does happen. And also just how some motivational variables make a significant difference in how individuals perform, and as such, because we can kind of help individuals develop different approaches to things, we can help them perform better if we address these motivational variables. Some limitations to the study and avenues for future research include that the sample was range restricted because Creighton's a very prestigious institution. It's kind of hard to get in, and so you tend to have people who are more intelligent to begin with. The test construction for the test of G and the test of academic achievement, we had to construct those tests. We weren't able to really validate with a very large sample. And so future research with a better validated and historically used test would be nice. Though for some that might be hard because of time constraints for academic testing. And the generalizability of results, it's hard to generalize beyond Creighton because of the uniqueness of our sample. For future research, it would be nice to investigate mechanisms through which looks and control acts to affect performance. So for instance, I referenced a study earlier where the researchers found that people who were high in internal looks and control tended to focus more on problem solving when they were under stress as opposed to their emotions. And so more things along the lines of that. And then, as a few thanks, I'd like to thank Dean Lieber for the opportunity to perform this study, and Dr. Cherney. Without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Thank you for your guidance. And thank you to everyone who's here, especially my parents over there, and everyone else. Does anyone have questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that a lot of your research was from ACT scores and you used your classes. Do you think you would have different results if you used perhaps students from a high school or something, and that would have changed some of your results?
It very well might have. You might have to adjust the test because they wouldn't be ready for a GRE test. And so you might want to use an SAT, well not ACT, SAT type deal. Which, it's, once again, one of the things about generalizability is it's just hard. But it would be good to investigate. And thank you for the suggestion. Does anyone else have any